I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, July the 18th, brought to you in part by Livestock Risk Services. That's Dakota Moss and all the agents that work with him. You think these LRPs are expensive, and they are on the surface, but how much have you spent on margin calls in the last 2 years? The LRPs are cheap compared to that. Then also Livestock Risk Services offers PRF if you're worried about drought later in the year. For more information, go to livestockriskservices.com. Also, Unionville Livestock Market in north central Missouri and Creston Livestock Market in south central Iowa. Unionville is going to have a big special this coming Tuesday on July 22nd at 10:30. They've got a lot of their top consignments coming in, including 250 head of the Rockin' R's. They're always popular there. Those backgrounded cattle weighing from 850 to 875. They're going to have 100 head of the Stottlemyre cattle coming in, home raised calves, 60 days weaned, no implants, weighing 450 to 650 there, and 80 head of the Reggie Brundage cattle coming in, black steers, long time weaned, no implants, weighing around 6. So be sure to tune in to Unionville Livestock Market on DVAuction.com. Creston Livestock Auction, they're taking a little break here in July, and they're ganging up for their annual Customer Appreciation Barbecue Special that's going to be held on Wednesday, August the 20th. Cheap cost of gains, and I know these feeder cattle are high, and they're high because we got short numbers of them, and there's just not many cattle around, and fat cattle market is good, but look at these cost of gains are so cheap. If you haven't been out in the Midwest, all through the Corn Belt, everybody I talk to from western Nebraska to eastern Illinois and all points in between down in Missouri and everywhere, this corn looks fantastic. I mean, as good as it's ever looked, and it's just going to be a bumper crop. I mean, unless something catastrophic happens with the weather here between now and harvest, they are going to have a bumper crop of corn here, and this cost of gain is going to be under 80 cents a pound, especially for a lot of these farmer feeders. Maybe not for the commercial feedlots that have the extra expenses, but for the farmer feeders feeding their own cattle, using their own equipment and their own labor. I mean, whenever your cost of gains are under 80 cents and each one of those pounds is worth $2.30 or $2.40, I mean, the lighter you can get them and the more you can put on them, the more you're going to make. It's just, it's unbelievable. And, you know, these corn bases are running, 20 cents under, and the board on corn is just $4.20. It's going to be cheap corn to put pounds on cattle. And I know these cattle feeders, like I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Livestock Risk Services, they have been making margin calls, and they're tired of it, and they're just thinking what they could have made if they hadn't protected themselves the last couple of years. But you need to protect yourself somehow, way, shape, or form here, because eventually this market is going to hit a wall and it's going to back down, and as volatile as it is, it's probably not going to just plane out. It's probably going to fall quite a ways. I'm still thinking the market's going to be good for another year and a half or so, but it will fall off of these peaks here, guys, and you got to protect yourselves. But and they're going to put pounds on cattle awfully cheap, just like the backgrounders have all winter here on these cheap cost of gains they had on wheat, and there's going to be cheap cost of gains on the grass they've had this summer. It's just been a perfect storm to make money on cattle. But you look at the board, August live cattle futures on Thursday were down 22 cents at 223.67. October down 42 cents at 220.32. As far as they are from the cash market, they decided to back down a little bit more, and the fat market was just a little bit higher, so it's just getting worse for that. But you look at your back months, they were down 42 cents to 62 cents. August feeder cattle futures down 57 at 325 smooth. September was down 42 cents at 325.42. And your back months on feeder cattle futures down 30 cents to up as much as $1.25. You look at new crop December corn was down 3 cents a bushel at 421. Soybeans for November new crop up 6 cents a bushel at 1026.5. And hard red winter wheat for September down 5 1/4 cent at 517.5. Fat cattle trade, we did have some trade break loose on Thursday, and we've likely established the market, and we saw significant trade in the north and probably enough trade now in the southern plains to establish a market there. But Iowa sold 2,600 head confirmed on Thursday, 3,350 head for the week. Live sales in Iowa from 237 to 240. And dress sales at 380. That would be steady on the dress sales and basically steady on the live sales too. In Nebraska, they sold 5,100. They had only sold a couple hundred head more than that earlier in the week. Live sales at 240 to 242. We hadn't seen the 242. 242 was to regionals there early in the trade. Then they traded quite a few cattle at 240. And then the Packers backed up their bids. I mean, backed up to 238. And if you didn't want to take that, you just held your cattle. And dress sales from 376 to 380. Kansas sold 1,000 head of cattle on Thursday, 2,300 for the week. Live sales in Kansas 230 to 231. Dress sales also at 380. Texas didn't post any sales so far this week at all, but I did hear of some late sales taking place at 230 live, which would be fully steady. Some auctions on fat cattle. Kelowna Sales Barn in Kelowna, Iowa is a DVAuction broadcaster there. They had 600 head for their fed cattle auction. They sold $5.50 to $6 higher. Conventional fed cattle, they didn't have many program cattle there, but the conventional fed cattle sell from $239 all the way up to $253. In Sheldon, Iowa, at Sheldon Livestock, they only had 300 head, a light run for them. They sold 2 higher to spot $6 higher. Conventional fed cattle there in Sheldon, Iowa, sold from $238 to $248. Box beef cutout values were mixed, and it was mostly lower because choice was only up 43 cents at $373.28. Selects were down 407 at $353.84. Your slaughter running so far through the first 4 days of the week up through Thursday, estimated cattle slaughter was 458,000 compared to last week at this point. It was 6,000 less than that and 20,000 less than the same week a year ago at this point. Talk about your feeder cattle market, brought to you by Specialty Risk Insurance. Your real-time index after your sales had all concluded on Thursday was sitting up at 325.06, gaining another $2.53 during the day on Thursday. Wow. And we haven't had any really big specials up in your premium sales in the Northern Plains. It's just been any of the sales where they had cattle offered there. They were selling excellent. Your latest CME cash feeder cattle index at 321.91. Look at your big sales on Thursday. The biggest was Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina, Kansas there. They had 3,400 head, and the sales were $5 to $15 higher than the last tested market. It was an excellent, excellent sale. These guys are starting to bring Flint Hills grass cattle into the sale barns. We're seeing that all over. You know, we've seen it in El Dorado, Kansas. You know, we've seen it in Parsons, Kansas. You know, we're seeing it in Fredonia, Kansas. They don't have the gall to ask what the cattle might bring in the sale barn, so they're just taking them to the sale barn. But Farmers and Ranchers was your Superior Steel Sales, home of Superior Standard Cattle Equipment. Stick out sale of the day, and look at this automated market report through Cattle Market Central, and you see what a good sale it was. 178 head of 5-weight steers weighed 558 on the average at 419.38. 328 head of 6-weight steers in Salina averaged 655 at 376.57. There were 551 head of the 7-weight steers, averaged 755 at 350.62. Wow. 536 head of 8-weight steers, a lot of them coming in off grass and the blue stem there, they averaged 855 at 321.70, and 358 head of the 9-weight steers in Salina averaged 933 pounds at 319.21. Let's look at some of the heifers. There were 258 head of 5-weight heifers at Salina. They averaged 552 at 379.90. 408 head of the 6-weight heifers averaged 648 at 346.57. There were 354 head of the 7-weight heifers, averaged 749 at 318.26, and 116 head of 8-weight heifers at Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina, Kansas. They averaged 845 with a weighted average price of $300.69. Look at some of the impressive quotes from all around the circuit. How about Bluegrass Stockyard South in Stanford, Kentucky? They had a whale of a sale, and they had several, impressive quotes all through there. Probably the most impressive to me was 82 steers, weighed 675 in Stanford, Kentucky. They bring 384.50. How about a market we never talk about, but Wheeler Livestock Auction in Osceola, Missouri? They sell 61 steers, weighed 840 pounds at 321.75. Go down there at the lower part of the Flint Hills there, and El Dorado Livestock Auction in El Dorado, Kansas. I mean, right in the heart of those best pastures there. They were getting Flint Hills cattle. They had 179 head of 919 pound steers, bring 321. But our most impressive quote on Thursday was, and your Macrocin No BS top quote for the day, indeed come out of Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina at that whale of a sale they had. They had 2 loads of steers, grass steers off the Flint Hills there. They averaged 942 pounds at 323. And that's your feeder flash for Friday.